Danny Thompson was an ordinary high school student, overlooked and ridiculed by his peers. After being publicly humiliated by Lisa Marconi, the girl he loved, at her birthday party, Danny's life took a dark turn. But 2 years later he returned, hidden behind a mask and fueled by a desire for revenge. This is the story of how Danny, with the help of an unexpected ally, plotted an ingenious plan to expose Lisa's cruelty at the biggest event of the year. What happened at prom will shock you. Danny Thompson was the kind of student who could walk through the halls of Westview High and barely catch a glance. His days at school were a series of unremarkable moments, punctuated by the occasional jibe or snicker from his classmates. At 18 years old, weighing around 230 pounds, Danny's physical appearance became a frequent target for school bullies. Despite his low profile, Danny nurtured a secret that kept him awake at night: a crush on Lisa Marconi, the most popular girl in school. Lisa, with her radiant smile and effortless charm, floated in circles far removed from Danny's solitary existence. She was a beacon of allure and grace, surrounded at all times by admirers and friends. For Danny she was like a star in the sky, beautiful to observe from a distance but far beyond reach. The dynamics at Westview were clear. Popular kids like Lisa thrived in the spotlight, while others like Danny faded into the background. Yet, the ordinary fabric of Danny's school life was about to undergo a shocking transformation. 2 weeks before her 18th birthday, Lisa did something entirely unexpected. She invited Danny to her birthday party. This invitation wasn't delivered through friends or passed along as a second-hand note. It was given to Danny personally by Lisa, accompanied by a smile that seemed genuinely kind. Elated beyond belief, Danny saw the invitation as a turning point, a crack in the universe through which he might finally connect with the girl of his dreams. Driven by a mixture of hope and nervous excitement, he decided to go all out for the party. He rented a sleek, black suit that he had admired in the window of a high-end boutique, thinking it made him look more distinguished. To arrive in style, he borrowed a cherry-red sports car from a family friend who trusted Danny enough to handle such a precious asset. Additionally, Danny invested most of his savings in a silver wristwatch, a gift he hoped would impress Lisa and symbolize his feelings. The night of the party arrived like the opening scene of a movie in which the underdog finally has his day. Danny's heart pounded with anticipation as he drove up to Lisa's house, the thumping beats of the party music growing louder with each approaching moment. The mansion was alive with the energy of celebrating youth, lit brilliantly with fairy lights that twinkled like stars descended to earth. Taking a deep breath to steady his nerves, Danny stepped out of the car and adjusted his suit. He walked up to the front door, rehearsing his greeting in his mind. His palms sweated around the neatly wrapped box containing the watch. Inside, the party was in full swing, with groups of students laughing, dancing, and sipping on colorful drinks. Danny spotted Lisa across the room, surrounded by a circle of friends. Gathering every ounce of his courage, he approached her. The crowd seemed to part as he moved forward, his focus entirely on Lisa's smiling face. When he finally reached her, he handed her the gift with a shy smile. Lisa's eyes sparkled with surprise as she took the package. "For me? You shouldn't have," she exclaimed, her voice loud enough to draw more eyes towards them. Danny just nodded, too overwhelmed by her proximity to speak. However, as Lisa unwrapped the gift, her expression shifted subtly. The room, buzzing just moments before, quieted down as if sensing a turning tide. When she saw what was inside, her smile twisted into something unrecognizable, and a chilling laugh escaped her lips. The sound struck Danny like a physical blow, echoing painfully in his ears. Confusion morphed into horror as Lisa turned to the crowd, which had grown oddly silent, and announced loudly, "Can you believe it? He actually thought I liked him." Her words were like daggers, and the crowd's reaction was immediate and cruel. Laughter erupted around him, sharp and mocking. Lisa continued, her voice dripping with malice, "It was all just a bet. To see if I could make the loser of the school fall for me. And guess what? He did." She gestured towards Danny with theatrical disdain, her followers laughing harder at each word. The room spun around Danny as his dream night turned into a nightmare. The laughter and pointing fingers blurred into a cacophony of cruelty that drowned out his rapid heartbeat. Humiliation washed over him in waves, and something dark and vengeful began to stir in the pit of his stomach. With every shred of dignity he could muster, Danny turned and left the party. He didn't run, he walked, each step fueled by a burgeoning resolve. As the laughter chased him out into the night, the cool air did little to soothe his burning cheeks. The drive home was a blur, his mind a whirlwind of humiliation and nascent plots for revenge. Danny knew one thing for certain. Lisa Marconi had not just humiliated him, she had ignited a fire that would change the course of their lives in ways none of them could foresee. The days following Lisa's birthday party were among the darkest of Danny's life. He withdrew completely, ensconced in the safety of his room, the curtains perpetually drawn. The usual noises of daily life, the distant sound of TV shows his parents watched, the occasional laughter from his younger sister, felt alien, as if they belonged to another world, one in which Danny no longer felt he had a place. His phone, once a lifeline to the few friends he had, now lay silent beside him, its screen dark. Messages piled up, unread. Calls went unanswered. Danny couldn't face anyone, not even to hear words of comfort or outrage on his behalf. The shame was too deep, the humiliation too raw. His mind replayed the party scene over and over, each recall etching the laughter and mocking faces deeper into his memory. As the initial shock faded, it was replaced by a simmering anger. Danny felt it in his gut, a burning, unquenchable fire that fueled his desire for revenge. He couldn't let them get away with what they had done. He wouldn't let Lisa's cruelty define him. But how could he face them again? How could he walk back into school and not be swallowed whole by the gales of laughter? The answer came to him one sleepless night. A disguise. A way to hide his identity but not his presence. It would be a mask not just of fabric but of persona. Danny began planning with meticulous detail, his mind sharpening with purpose. He sketched designs, browsed online for materials and learned basic crafting techniques. The mask he envisioned would be symbolic, a stark white, featureless facade that would shield him from their scorn and curiosity. 2 weeks after the party, Danny was ready. The mask, smooth and emotionless, sat in his backpack as he prepared for school. His stomach churned with nerves, but the anger that fueled him was greater than his fear. He donned the mask just before entering the school building, feeling a strange empowerment as he concealed his vulnerability behind the impassive facade. As he walked the familiar halls, whispers fluttered around him like dark butterflies. Who is that? What's with the mask? The anonymity was intoxicating. He was there but not exposed, present but protected. He reached his locker, his steps steady, his ears tuned to the murmurs of confusion and curiosity. Danny's first encounter was with Mr. Henderson, his English teacher, who looked startled but intrigued by the masked student. "Care to explain, Mr. Thompson?" he asked, an eyebrow raised in both concern and challenge. "It's a social experiment," Danny lied smoothly, his voice muffled but firm. "For psychology class." The explanation seemed to satisfy Mr. Henderson, or at least it curbed his curiosity enough to let Danny pass without further question. His confidence grew as he moved through the corridors to his first class. But as soon as he entered, the atmosphere shifted. Laughter erupted almost instantly, spearheaded by none other than Lisa and her clique, who were sitting at the back of the room. They whispered and giggled, not caring to lower their voices as they mocked the masked figure who dared to challenge the day's normalcy. One of them, a boy named Rick who was known for his brashness, stood up and sauntered over to Danny. "What's with the Halloween get-up, freak?" Rick sneered, reaching out to snatch the mask off Danny's face. Before the situation could escalate, a voice cut through the tension. "Leave him alone, Rick." The class turned to see Sarah Jenkins standing up from her seat. Sarah, with her plain Jane looks and thrift store clothes, had always been an outsider herself. "Why do you care, Sarah?" Rick mocked, turning his venomous attention towards her, but she stood her ground. "Because it's wrong," Sarah said, her voice stronger than her slight frame suggested. "What are you trying to prove by being so cruel?" Rick scoffed and looked around for support, but the class was silent, some of the students curious about Sarah's sudden defiance. Frustrated and not wanting to seem challenged by what he perceived as lower peers, Rick turned away, muttering under his breath as he returned to his seat. Danny sat down, heart pounding, grateful yet amazed by Sarah's intervention. Throughout the class, he could feel her eyes on him, her silent support like a beacon. When the bell rang, he hesitated, unsure of his next move. Before he could decide, Sarah was at his side. "Why the mask?" she asked gently as they walked out together. Danny hesitated, then decided on partial truth. "To hide," he admitted, "and maybe, to start over." Sarah nodded, understanding more than Danny realized. "Well, I think it's brave. And whatever you're planning, I hope it shows them they can't treat people this way." Her words buoyed Danny's spirits as they parted ways. The rest of the day passed in a blur of whispered speculation and sidelong glances. The mask, once just a shield, became a symbol. Danny wasn't just hiding. He was challenging the status quo, setting the stage for his retribution. The halls of Westview High, once a battleground of humiliation, were now the backdrop of his mysterious resurgence. As the school day ended, Danny walked home, the mask still in place, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. His initial return had stirred something within the student body. Rumors swirled, some saying the masked student was a new kid, others speculating wilder theories. But Danny knew the truth. He was the same Danny Thompson, yet reborn from the ashes of his former self, ready to reshape his destiny one hidden gaze at a time. For the first time in years, Danny didn't feel entirely alone. Sarah's boldness in standing up for him was like a ray of sunlight breaking through the dark clouds that had hung over his life since Lisa's humiliating birthday party. Her act of kindness wasn't just a momentary defense, it was the beginning of something neither of them had anticipated. Sarah wasn't a stranger to bullying. With her second-hand clothes and the quiet, unassuming demeanor of someone used to being overlooked, she had weathered her share of harsh comments and whispers behind her back. Yet, unlike Danny, she had long since decided not to let it define her. Her bravery didn't come from confidence in her appearance or social standing, it came from an inner strength forged by years of surviving on the fringes. She understood what it felt like to be seen as less than, and she couldn't stand by and watch someone else endure it. Danny, though still cautious, found himself drawn to her. The first time they talked after class, Sarah asked if he wanted to walk home together. At first, Danny hesitated. He wasn't used to company and he was still grappling with the vulnerability that came from having someone notice him, even in kindness. But something in Sarah's steady, encouraging gaze convinced him to take the risk. As they walked through the quiet suburban streets, Danny began to open up. He told Sarah about the humiliation at Lisa's party, not in the dramatic detail that haunted his own mind but in halting, careful sentences, as though saying the words aloud might bring the pain rushing back. Sarah listened intently, her brow furrowed, her hands clutching the straps of her backpack. "That's horrible," she said when he finished. "But it says so much more about them than it ever will about you." Danny blinked, her words disarming him. "What do you mean?" "It means they're insecure," Sarah explained. "People like Lisa, they need to tear others down to make themselves feel big. It's pathetic, really." Danny hadn't thought of it that way before. He had spent so much time blaming himself for being an easy target that he hadn't stopped to consider that the problem might lie with the bullies, not him. Their walks home became a daily routine. With every conversation, Danny and Sarah discovered more common ground. They bonded over their shared love of books. Sarah introduced Danny to her favorite fantasy novels, while Danny recommended the sci-fi stories that had helped him escape from reality when things got tough. They laughed over their mutual disdain for gym class and confided in each other about their dreams for the future. Danny wanted to study engineering, to build things that would last longer than the fleeting high school years. Sarah dreamed of becoming an artist, her sketchbook a constant companion. As their friendship deepened, Danny began to notice a change within himself. He started looking forward to school again, not because the laughter or whispers had stopped but because he knew Sarah would be there, a steady source of support. With her encouragement, he started participating more in class, even volunteering to answer questions. The mask he had worn for protection started to feel less like armor and more like a reminder of the person he was becoming. Someone braver, someone stronger. Meanwhile, Lisa continued her reign as Queen of Westview High. She strutted through the hallways with her usual entourage, her voice loud and commanding, her laughter sharp and cutting. It didn't matter to her that whispers about the masked student lingered in the air. She dismissed it as an oddity, something unworthy of her attention. As far as she was concerned, Danny Thompson had been dealt with, and the world had returned to its proper order. But Lisa's obliviousness to Danny and Sarah's growing friendship would soon come back to haunt her. As spring rolled into summer, the buzz around school began to shift toward a single event: prom. Posters advertising the midnight masquerade theme adorned the hallways, and students spent their lunch breaks debating dresses, tuxedos, and potential dates. For most of Westview High, prom was the pinnacle of their social calendar, a chance to solidify their status, create memories, and revel in the glamour of youth. For Danny, the idea of attending prom felt laughable. He couldn't imagine walking into that gymnasium-turned-ballroom and facing the same people who had laughed at him, even with Sarah by his side. The thought of dancing in front of them, of wearing a suit that might invite more ridicule, filled him with dread. "I'm not going," he announced one afternoon as he and Sarah sat on the edge of a quiet park, their backpacks propped against a tree. Sarah raised an eyebrow, her pencil pausing over her sketchbook. "Why not?" Danny sighed. "Because it's just not my thing. You know, crowds, music, people staring at me, it's a recipe for disaster. People stare at you now and you're fine, Sarah pointed out gently. You've gotten stronger, Danny. You're not the same person you were 2 months ago. He didn't answer, staring instead at the small stream that trickled through the park. Sarah closed her sketchbook and turned to face him. Look, she said, her tone soft but firm. I get it. Prom isn't easy for people like us. But maybe that's why we should go. To show them that we're not afraid. That they can't break us. Danny hesitated, her words stirring something inside him. He had spent so much time hiding, so much time letting fear dictate his choices. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe this was his chance to reclaim something. Besides, Sarah added with a playful smirk, I need a date and I think you'd look pretty great in a tux. Danny couldn't help but laugh. All right, he said after a moment. But only if you promise not to laugh when I inevitably trip over my own feet. Deal? Sarah said, grinning. The weeks leading up to prom were a whirlwind of preparation. Sarah dragged Danny to a thrift store, insisting they could find him a decent suit without spending a fortune. After hours of searching, they found one. A deep navy suit that fit surprisingly well after a few adjustments. You clean up nice, Sarah said, giving him an approving nod as he emerged from the dressing room. Danny blushed. You're not so bad yourself, he replied, noting the emerald green dress Sarah had chosen. Together they worked on their confidence. Sarah taught Danny a few basic dance moves in her living room, the two of them laughing as he stumbled through the steps. They brainstormed ways to handle any awkward encounters at prom, from witty comebacks to simply ignoring the haters. As prom night approached, Danny felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. He wasn't just attending for the sake of it, he was attending with a purpose. With Sarah by his side, he felt capable of facing whatever came his way. The night of the prom arrived, and the air buzzed with anticipation. The gymnasium had been transformed into an elegant ballroom, complete with twinkling lights and a grand chandelier. Students arrived in pairs and groups, their outfits dazzling under the soft glow. Danny and Sarah walked in together, their entrance understated but powerful. Heads turned as they stepped through the doors, the whispers beginning almost immediately. Danny felt a flicker of fear, but Sarah squeezed his hand reassuringly. You've got this, she whispered. As the night unfolded, Danny realized Sarah had been right. The whispers didn't matter. The stares didn't matter. What mattered was that he was there, standing tall, refusing to let the weight of his past crush him. He even danced, his awkward moves earning a few chuckles but also genuine smiles from students who saw him in a new light. With every step, every laugh shared with Sarah, Danny felt the pieces of his shattered confidence beginning to mend. Meanwhile, Lisa, oblivious to the transformation unfolding before her, basked in her own moment of glory. Dressed in a gown that shimmered like liquid gold, she commanded the attention of the room. But as she twirled on the dance floor, Danny couldn't help but notice something he hadn't seen before. A hollow look in her eyes, a crack in the mask of perfection she wore so effortlessly. For the first time, Danny didn't envy her. For the first time he felt free. And as the night drew to a close, he realized that while revenge might have driven him in the beginning, it was something else. Growth, resilience, and the strength of an unexpected ally that had truly set him free. Prom night arrived like a long-awaited crescendo, filling the air with a sense of excitement and anticipation. The gymnasium at Westview High had been transformed into a vision of elegance. String lights hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the room, and the faint scent of fresh flowers from the centerpieces mingled with the perfume of hundreds of students dressed in their best. Danny and Sarah arrived fashionably late, intentionally avoiding the early crowd. As they stepped through the doors, the transformation was immediate, and the reaction was electric. Heads turned. Conversations hushed. Danny, no longer the boy who had been mocked mercilessly, carried himself with a newfound confidence. He had shed a noticeable amount of weight through months of effort, but it wasn't just the physical change that drew attention. It was the way he walked, shoulders back, head held high. His navy suit was tailored to perfection, and the subtle shine of his polished shoes completed the look. Beside him, Sarah was radiant. Her emerald green gown flowed gracefully, shimmering under the soft lights, and her hair, swept to one side, framed her face with an elegance that made her almost unrecognizable to her classmates. The two of them were a vision, a stark contrast to the Danny and Sarah everyone thought they knew. The whispers began immediately. Is that Danny Thompson? No way. He looks amazing. And Sarah Jenkins? She's stunning. Danny caught a few surprised glances but ignored them, focusing instead on Sarah, who beamed at him with pride. Told you you'd clean up nicely, she said, giving his arm a playful squeeze. Speak for yourself, Danny replied, grinning. You look like you just walked out of a magazine. They walked into the crowd, heads held high, soaking in the stunned silence and whispers. For the first time, Danny wasn't just a spectator at one of these events, he was part of it. Yet, as much as this moment was about reclaiming his confidence, Danny had a plan for the night. One that would shift the balance of power and expose Lisa Marconi for who she truly was. Lisa Marconi had planned her prom night to perfection, as she always did. Her dress, a floor-length golden gown encrusted with sequins, shimmered with every step she took. Her makeup was flawless, and her hair had been styled by a professional earlier that afternoon. She was determined to be the center of attention, the queen of the ball. But Lisa had a secret, a date no one knew about. Over the past few weeks, she had been exchanging messages with a celebrity she believed to be the rising pop star Kyle Griffin. She had no idea that the person she had been texting was Danny, carefully pretending to be Kyle. Using a borrowed social media account and fake photos, Danny had convinced Lisa that Kyle would accompany her to the prom. Lisa had broken up with her boyfriend, Paul, days before the event, determined to make her entrance with a star by her side. She had told anyone who would listen that her date was a surprise, building anticipation among her classmates. Tonight, Lisa would not only be admired but envied. Danny had orchestrated every detail of his plan with precision. Earlier that evening he had enlisted the help of Mr. Jack, the elderly custodian at Westview High, who was known for his kind nature and sense of humor. Mr. Jack had agreed to play the role of Kyle Griffin, donning a long coat and a hat to obscure his features. Danny had even applied makeup to give Mr. Jack the appearance of someone younger, at least from a distance. As Lisa waited outside the gymnasium for her celebrity date to arrive, she was a bundle of nerves and excitement. Her heart raced every time a car pulled up, and she adjusted her dress, imagining the stunned faces of her classmates when they saw her with Kyle. Finally, a sleek black car pulled into the lot. Lisa's breath hitched as the driver stepped out and opened the back door. Out emerged Mr. Jack, his coat collar pulled up and his hat tilted just low enough to obscure most of his face. From a distance he looked every bit the mysterious celebrity. "Lisa Marconi?" he asked, his voice slightly gravelly. "Yes." Lisa practically squealed, stepping forward to greet him. "I'm so glad you made it." Mr. Jack nodded curtly, playing his part perfectly. "Shall we?" he asked, offering her his arm. Lisa looped her arm through his, practically floating as they approached the entrance. Inside, the music pulsed, and the crowd danced under the glittering lights. The energy was palpable, but as Lisa and her date stepped inside, the energy shifted. Heads turned. A collective murmur spread through the room like wildfire. "It's Lisa," someone said. "Who's that with her?" another asked. Lisa, relishing the attention, smiled smugly. "Everyone's watching us," she whispered to Mr. Jack, who nodded but said nothing. Danny and Sarah stood near the dance floor, watching the scene unfold. Sarah glanced at Danny, her brows furrowed. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. Danny nodded. "She needs to know what it feels like." The moment of truth came when Lisa led her date onto the stage. She grabbed the microphone, her voice ringing with confidence. "Everyone," she began, her words amplified over the crowd. "I'd like to introduce you all to my date, Kyle Griffin." The room erupted into whispers, phones flashing as students scrambled to take pictures. Lisa basked in the attention, waiting for the inevitable chorus of envy and admiration. But then, something unexpected happened. Mr. Jack, at Danny's earlier instruction, removed his hat and coat in a dramatic flourish. The crowd gasped. Instead of the young, handsome pop star they had expected, they saw an elderly man with a mischievous grin, standing awkwardly in a too-large suit. The silence that followed was deafening. And then, like a dam breaking, laughter erupted. It wasn't the polite chuckles of an amused audience. It was full-bodied, uncontrollable laughter that echoed off the gymnasium walls. Lisa's face turned bright red as the reality of the situation sank in. What is this?" she stammered, backing away from Mr. Jack. "You're not Kyle Griffin." Mr. Jack shrugged, playing his part to perfection. "Nope. But you sure seemed excited to meet me." The laughter grew louder, with students doubling over, tears streaming down their faces. Lisa's carefully curated image of perfection crumbled in an instant. Her classmates, who had once hung on her every word, now pointed and laughed as she stood frozen on the stage. From his vantage point near the dance floor, Danny watched the scene unfold, his emotions a mix of satisfaction and pity. This was the moment he had envisioned for weeks, the moment Lisa would feel the sting of humiliation she had inflicted on so many others. But as he saw the tears welling in her eyes, he realized something. Revenge, while satisfying, wasn't as sweet as he'd imagined. Sarah nudged him gently. You did it, she said softly. Are you okay? Danny nodded slowly. Yeah. I didn't think it would feel like this. As Lisa fled the stage, her golden gown shimmering under the harsh lights, Danny felt a twinge of sympathy. He knew what it felt like to be the target of ridicule, to have your world turned upside down in an instant. For a moment he considered going after her, but Sarah stopped him. She needs to figure this out on her own, Sarah said. Let's enjoy the rest of the night. Danny nodded, letting Sarah pull him toward the dance floor. As they swayed to the music, surrounded by the laughter and joy of their classmates, Danny felt a sense of closure. Lisa's reign was over and he had finally reclaimed his place, not just at Westview High but in his own life. The night ended not with grand declarations or dramatic speeches but with quiet moments of understanding and growth. Danny and Sarah left the prom arm in arm, their bond stronger than ever, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.